What does it mean to live a resilient life? I'm Ryan Manion. I lost my brother to war and my mom to cancer, and I've learned a lot about myself along the way. Now, as the CEO of Travis Manion Foundation, I'm on a journey to explore what it means to be resilient against life's many challenges. Join me and some incredible guests as we ask ourselves the hard questions and define what it means to struggle well. All right, we're back with another episode of the Resilient Life podcast. I am bringing back a guest for a second time because he's such a great guy and he's got a new book out, and I love talking to him. So, Mike Hayes, welcome back to the Resilient Life.
Ryan Manion, are you kidding me? It's such an honor. I am impressed with a lot of people in life, but no one more than you. The impact that you create for this great nation and for people, both, it's just indescribably humbling and exciting to be here with you.
Thank you. Well, I remember when I first had you on, and I'm going to start off with a quick story. You had sent me a copy of your book, Never Enough, and I was super excited to dive into it. And I always, when I have a guest on that has a book, I want to make sure that I'm reading that book and I'm capturing that book. And I always, I don't do the Jocko thing where Jocko likes to really dissect a book through. You've been on Jocko's podcast, haven't you?
I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he does a great job. I've been on his podcast, and he takes the book and he goes through the entirety of the book.
Ryan, with due respect to present company, like Jocko is like probably the most prepared.
Totally.
Person. I grew up with Jocko, and I was like so blown away and impressed with like his like detailed preparation. Like he lives like he describes.
Yeah, it's wild. But one of the things that, I read Never Enough, and we talked a little bit about that when I had you on at first, and there was something from that book that hit me. I don't know if you remember what I shared with you about that book. There was one line in there, and it was something that you say and you would say to your kids. Do you remember what it is?
Make it a great day.
Make it a great day. Yeah. And so that was, I think it's been at least over a year. It might be a couple years since you've been on.
Yeah, it's probably 3 years-ish.
Wow.
Like
yeah.
Yeah.
So every, when I read that, and there's just times where I'm reading something and there's a line that hits me. And that was a line that hit me because, I take my kids to school every day. Now I only have one I'm taking to school, but my son, and like every day when I would drop my kids off, I'd say, have a great day. Love you. Have a great day. And I read your line, make it a great day. And it was literally the next day I went to drop off the kids at school. And I said, it was my daughter and son. And I said, all right, kids, make it a great day. And my daughter was like, what? I'm like, make it a great day. And she was like, you're weird, Mom, But she's now in high school and I still have my 11-year-old son. But every day since I had you on that first time, when I dropped my son off at school, I say, make it a great day. And that is what I say to him.
It's like we were instantly simpatico because I think we think about the world so similarly, Ryan. And I think, like make is an active verb, have is a passive verb.
Yeah.
Are you going to let the world happen to you, or are you going to go happen to the world? You're a force and an impact for good. You go happen to the world. You go make things happen. And that little word difference is really symbolic of so much.
Yeah. It was just like kind of flipping the mindset that, like you said, like you decide. You don't get to decide if you have a good day, but you do get to decide on some levels if you're going to make it a great day. And it was funny because last week, you were coming on, I knew you were coming on, and Travis was getting out of the car, and I said, hey, Trav, and he said, I know, Mom. Make it a great day, So I'm like, it's hitting with him. It's resonating. And I hope that one day he looks back and he remembers all those years of me saying that to him when he got out of my car in the morning. So I want to thank you for that because it's kind of changed our morning routine a little bit. I feel like I let him go into the world each day with a mission as opposed to just like passively letting whatever happens that day happen. So
I love that. That's so deeply meaningful to me. And you're an author and an incredible impact to you. Like, when you get those little blips of like you helped somebody, or like that's what makes it all worth it.
Yeah, totally. Well, you're back because you've got a new book, Mission Driven, The Path to a Life of Purpose. And I just finished reading it this morning in full. I'm not as prepared as Jocko, but I did finish the book this morning, and it's fantastic, and I love it, and I want to dive into it. And it is number 4 on the best-selling list of USA Today, so incredible. Obviously, it didn't just resonate with me, but it resonated with a lot of people. So congratulations on that.
Well, thank you so much. It's really the conversation around purpose, and there are reasons the market and people out in the world grab onto certain things, and it's humbling, but at the same time, all it is like is about making that difference. I'll tell you, since you brought up the number 4 thing, and we're talking about kids a second ago, and being humbled. It was the first week that the book came out where it debuted as number 4. And I called my wife and daughter, put them on a joint call, and I was like, "Hey guys, you're never gonna believe this. Like, this thing debuted as number 4. Within 20 minutes, my daughter sent a picture of like 3 that she drew with like 3 people on the podium, and Dad like way off to the side as number 4, looking in from the outside."
Nothing like the kid to humble you, right?
Like, thanks, number 4 in the world, but you're not good enough for you. It was great.
I love it. Well, for those that did not hear the first interview with you, I do want to read a little bit about your background because it's super impressive. And I think it really speaks to why people want to hear from you, why you wrote Never Enough, why you wrote Mission Driven. But, Mike was a former U.S. Navy SEAL commander and veteran of more than 20 years of service, including leadership of SEAL Team 2, and a 2,000-person Special Operations Task Force in Afghanistan. He later served in the White House under 2 different administrations and has held senior defense policy roles. Transitioning into the private sector, Mike has held numerous C-suite and board roles and founded the 1162 Foundation, which pays off mortgages for Gold Star families. He's currently the managing director of Insight Partners, a global software investment firm, and his new book, Mission Driven, The Path to a Life of Purpose, offers a blueprint for individuals on the cusp of change who are seeking to translate values, service, and leadership into impact. I do have here, and I guess I will add, he is also a lifelong Patriots fan. Other than that, I think you have a tremendous bio and background.
Well, we could go Eagles Patriots all day long, and I know it'd be fun and sporty, but that's not what anybody wants to hear me jabber about.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Well, I want to dive right into it because again, I don't have the Jocko. I'm not going to go through everything, but there was a few things in here that hit me, and I'd love to talk a little bit more about them. And one of the first things is that I loved was around this idea of, and I think it kind of speaks to make it a great day, right? It was this idea, and this was in your introduction, Mike, but you talked about using the term mission and not passion. And it was interesting because you said, I used the term mission and not passion intentionally. First, because I don't think our passions should or will always align with every aspect of our lives. But more importantly, because mission is bigger, it's more meaningful and more directed to the world beyond ourselves. And that really made me stop and think because, I talk a lot when people ask me about my work at the Travis Manion Foundation and the evolution of it and how it's grown. And I often will say, I feel so incredibly blessed that I get to wake up and with passion every day for the work that I do. But when you put it into those two terms, it is more like this idea of it's a mission, right? It like what we do at the Travis Manion Foundation is a mission. And every day when I wake up, like I talk about it being a passion, and it certainly is a passion, but every day isn't a passion, right? Everything that I do is not a passion related to the Travis Manion Foundation. But at the end of the day, I'm helping to achieve our mission and what we're doing. So I loved how you broke down the difference between those two words and what they meant.
You're, I think, probably the only person to really cue in on that I've spoken with, and I think it's really key to having impact. You just said exactly where my mind went as you were talking about this, which is, let's take the Travis Manion Foundation. Your incredible brother can influence so many people while he was here. And now, how does he continue to influence people? It's through your hard work and others' hard work. So, 80% of that or some number of that might be from passion. But look, to achieve anything and really have impact, there's a lot of things that are the hard work that no one wishes they were doing. And it takes the passion part plus the non-passion part to really have the impact. So that's what you have to lean into is in the same thing with my own foundation. Like the 1162 Foundation has paid off 12 mortgages for Gold Star families. And that it's not like my wife understands it when I say this, but my 12 favorite days of my life and my most meaningful days are the days that I've been able, those 12 days when I've been able to tell some Gold Star widow that she doesn't have a mortgage anymore. And it's deeply, deeply meaningful. And that doesn't come from just all the fun part of it. It comes from me diverting and stopping into somewhere and doing some over speech where I get overpaid from some company, and then I shovel all of that money to the nonprofit. But I say yes to every single thing that I can because I've been so fortunate. I've been given so much that really life is about giving back, and so doing those hard things are how you achieve missions.
Yeah, I love it. Another thing that you touch on in the introduction, and I think it was, I don't think you put it in here to be incredibly brilliant in how you were framing out this book, but it was, you talk about, you say, I should be very clear, for as much as it may appear that I have it all figured out, I haven't. And you go on to talk about, like, you still struggle. You still wake up every, some days confused on different things. And I think that is so important for people to understand. Like, I say that all the time when I'm out and they're like, how do you do everything you do? And I'm like, not well every day, that's just the reality. And I think a lot of times we can have this veil on of like perfection. And you broke down those barriers real quick before you even got into the meat of the book. So I just appreciated that you did that. I really loved that part.
Well, thank you. It's just truth. I mean, anybody who says they have it all figured out is either ignorant or lying. And so it doesn't. And you know what? You don't have a book if you're just trying to sound like the president of your own fan club.
Yeah.
So I've had so many people that can look at my, like, I don't know, resume or trajectory or where I am, et cetera, and think that I have it all figured out. And it means that I've made some decent choices along the way. But what has enabled me to make those decent choices are all the less than decent, the harder choices that I've made along the way. And I think that, wisdom comes from what you learn that you wish you could do differently than the other way around. And I've been fortunate to make a lot of mistakes or do a lot of things that I could have done better and learn from it. And then that's why I ultimately write a book, is because I didn't aspire to be an author. I didn't aspire to write one book. I didn't aspire to write two. I just felt like, if to the wonderful words on my favorite T-shirt that is in my closet, as infrequently as possible, because sometimes it's 7 days a week that I wear it. On the back it says, "If not me, then who?"
I love it. Yeah. I'm gonna keep going through. I was gonna flip back and forth through some questions, but I just kind of want to fire through just some different pieces in the book that really hit me, and some of them were more personal to me, and but some of them are bigger picture. You said here, at the same time, I'm someone who is imperfect, who has his own faults and flaws, who comes up short, and is always trying to balance accepting who he is and where I am with striving to do and be more. Besides husband, father, and brother on my tombstone, there will be one other word: patriot. Which is why I was driven to serve this country and continue to be driven to do so each and every day. And, I read that, and my mom is buried in Section 60 at Arlington. She's there in my dad's plot where it will be his final resting place. And, when we put the epitaph on his gravestone, or her gravestone, it says Janet Manion, and under, it's got her dates, and, she didn't serve. So she doesn't have all everything else that you see on the white headstones there, but it says wife, mother, and patriot. And we are very intentional about putting those words on her headstone. And so when I read that, it really hit me. It really, really hit me.
It's hitting me right now. That's really moving.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's not the New England patriot part. That's the, like, look, it is about serving other people. It's about sacrifice, others before self. And man alive, it's like we are only on the planet to serve each other and to make each other better and to make this great nation better. It's what I deeply, deeply believe. It's who I aspire to be. Sometimes I do it well, many times less than well, but that to me is the singular word that drives me. And to your point earlier, like, look, I often ask myself, like, I'm at a point in my life where I could like retire and slow down just like, but I keep going and running hard.
Yeah.
I've got an opportunity now to have a heck of a lot more family time or keep doing things and having impact in the world. And it's just the question is, am I getting that balance right? Like, I don't know. Like, I genuinely don't know. But those are some of the struggles and the wrestles. But the inside voices, all we can do is the best we can with the information we have. But that means so much to me that you picked up on that singular bit.
Well, it was funny because, when my mom passed, you think about all the things to describe her, and it was like, she was a military spouse for 30 years. She's a Gold Star mother. She started a national veteran service organization. And it was like, how do you encompass everything she did into one word? And that was it. It was like, she was a patriot, And so I love that.
Amen.
I love
That's
that.
amazing.
I love that you put that. One of the other things I loved about this book, and I think, and I was thinking in my head, like, I've been having a lot of conversations with people in my life about who are looking potentially to like, maybe start a new career or try to figure out what their next step is. What does that next step look like in their life? And I mean, you break it down. You break it down into the long game and the short game, which is incredible. But outside of that, you also break it down. And I love things that are very applicable. And this book is applicable because not only do you talk about shared lessons, you give great stories, but then you follow up with exercises. And so I found myself like doing a lot of these exercises in my head. It was like, you have an exercise, you talk about making your own meta plan. And then, take a moment to think about where you're starting from. And then you ask some hypotheticals. One, your boss asks you to move to China for 2 years to start a new office. How do you make that decision whether to go or not? You get called to a new job opportunity. How do you decide if it's the right fit or are there better options out there for you? A family member's having a crisis and asks you to dump everything and come help them for an indefinite amount of time. How would you respond? And so, and a lot of the exercises are very much like this. It's meant, and I'm speaking for you, but it's meant to be thought provoking, right? It's meant to prepare you. And when I talk about resilience a lot, I say you have to build resilience. Right? You don't just wake up one day and you get hit with something and you're like, I'm going to be resilient, right? You have to prepare for what that's going to inevitably look like. And you give the reader opportunities to prepare. And so I loved how you laid this out. I love the way you laid this book out. It was brilliant.
Well, you're too kind and probably wrong if you're calling it brilliant. So, but no, but look, the reason once I wrote Never Enough 4 years ago when it came out, I was like, oh, finally, I'm done. I've got everything in my head out. But what happened over the years was numerous SEALs after 20 years in the SEAL teams and some success in the private sector, I'm frequently asked to coach and mentor people out of not just the SEALs but the military at large. And I do as much of that as I can, but I get asked way more than I can support.
Yeah.
And so I think like people need frameworks. Like I don't have the answer for what your passion is. Like people say to me, whenever anybody is giving advice, usually the advice sounds something like you should do what I did because I'm the smartest person I know. I know that to be false. So why should I project what I think is best for you? What you need to do is answer it from your own heart and your own head. And I think a mistake that a lot of people make when they're transitioning out of the military is they have one or two things in front of them and they're like, well, I know a guy or a gal who has a thing and I'm going to go see if this thing is the right thing for me. And that's not the way to think about it. You have to start top down and start kind of more in the abstract and say, how much do I care about geography, industry, size of company, role that I'm in, quality of life, compensation, et cetera, et cetera. And then once you can kind of force rank those attributes, if you will, in the abstract, that helps you understand what motivates you. Then when you get that call to like, do you want to open the office in China and live there for 2 years, you kind of have something to map back against because what do you value? And I think that generating, like if I'm going to make a move, and I have one thing in front of me, why do I want to choose from one thing? Why not be intentional and say, okay, I'm going to go move, I'm going to go generate 20 things or 100 things so that I can choose from a larger denominator. And that's the thing that I really, if there's any gift or something or advice or help I'd love to give people, is to help them be more top down and intentional. And
Yeah.
that's the framework.
And you're very clear to say that, like, there's no right answer to these questions, right?
Yeah.
There's just not, but you have to be thinking about them. And you have to answer them, like you said, for yourself, you know?
Well, and the more thoughtful you are before you make one of these decisions, then a year, 2, 3 years down the road, when things are getting a little bumpy or you're a little more frustrated than you were, you can at least look back and say, I ran an intentional kind of process, if you will. I made the best decision I could with the information that I had at the time,
Yeah.
and you can't feel bad about it. We're all striving to be the best we can in any given moment. So give yourself that grace.
I love that. And I will say, admittedly, I can be a very impulsive person when it comes to decision making. So the ability to kind of like slow down and, like you say, make informed decisions, be a little bit more reflective before making them. It was a good reminder for me. So I appreciate that. One of the things, and that I've always appreciated about you is, number one, you talk about the 12 mortgages you paid off for Gold Star families. And not only have you done that, but you keep families of the fallen like first and foremost in everything that you do. And I see it in just, through your social media, through your books, through your speaking. And, I share that as a Gold Star family member. That's incredibly meaningful to me. A lot of people talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk, and you do. And your book is a collection of stories. And I love how you tell the stories of interactions you've had with people you've served with. And, some of them are still here, and a lot of them aren't. And you share little tidbits. It's not these long, drawn out, but it's just little tidbits. So you just get to know that name and that story. And so I love the way you did that and weaved that into this book. And I don't know if we ever made this connection, but the start of chapter 8, mission driven in our relationships, the first line says, "My friend Job Price and I used to joke that together we made one heck of a good seal. Between the two of us, he had the on-the-fly creativity, humor, and flexibility to counter the sometimes too intense focus and preparation that I would default to. It wasn't exactly that we were opposites, but we brought out the best elements of each other, which is why we weren't just good teammates, but people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company." Job sadly died by suicide on his last deployment, a story that was covered by the New York Times and that I shared in Never Enough. And I don't know if I shared this with you the first time you're on the podcast, but my connection to Job Price is that his father, Harry, was my dad's lacrosse coach in high school. And, just that connection with the Price family. And I remember when we learned that Job had died, how devastated my dad was by that loss, because, he was like Coach Price. And we ended up at a memorial service together, and my dad had not seen him in probably 30 years. It was his high school lacrosse coach. And I remember that interaction between the two of them. Again, Harry was my dad's coach, right? So it was like, that was young Tommy as he knew him back in the day. And then here was my dad in his 60s now, and, walking up to his old coach, and the embrace the two of them shared, with just this commonality that they had both lost their sons. And it was I'll never forget, it was at Valley Forge Park at the memorial service. And I was so moved by that interaction. And, Harry sadly has passed away. Yeah, it was just, just to see Job's name in that book, in the book, and just that little, again, you weren't going and telling this full blown story. It was just this little slice of, let me just tell you about my friend Job. you know? So I love the way you did that. And he wasn't the only one, but I wanted to point him out specifically because of that connection.
Well, it's so amazing. And it's, as you know, when people are gone, the ability to kind of rehab a conversation with somebody who knew somebody, it's really, it does bring that person back. And there was not a greater American or human. Job was just always so up. And honestly, it's, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say this on a public podcast, but like, we were the family that was inside the Price's house on that night, and his daughter, I'll leave her nameless right now, but I'm sure like I'll never get her screams out of my head. She said he'd come home. She promised he'd come home. And I will always hear that. And man, I actually carry a ton of. A ton of guilt because that it was a Friday afternoon. I tried to call him on the yellow line to check in on him, and you needed a new 4-digit PIN. And I was like at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon at the SEAL team. Everybody was long gone, and I said, you know what? I'll just call him on Monday. And then he took his own life on Saturday. And I'm probably one of the few people that would have heard that in his voice. And there's more I could have done. And so how do I, number one, like. It does for the rest of my life. I'll always know that I could have done more like that. Like anybody can say whatever they want. That'll never change. Nobody can ever change my mind on that. And it weighs really heavy on me. But then at the same time, I say to myself, like, how do I, keep my chin up, chest out, and eyes on the horizon, and use these examples in life to go help other people. And it's what really helps me talk to people about be intrusive in other people's lives. And, being intrusive is often heard as a bad word, but being intrusive to me is a good word, because when I, can put my hands on your shoulders and look you in the eyes and say, Ryan, how are you today?
Yeah.
Like I should want to know the answer, I'm fluent in German, and it's funny in German, V Gates, how are you? The Germans want the answer. Culturally, if you say V Gates and you walked by somebody, ooh, watch out. Like, what's wrong with that person? In America, when we say, how are you? We don't actually want the answer.
Right. It's just like, good.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you talk about that in the book. I don't remember specifically in what section, but you talk about this idea of like, think of 5 people that you've maybe lost contact with. Like pick up the phone, shoot them a text, send them an email. And, again, that intentionality of like reconnecting, building those relationships. And you said something about, again, you missed that call, or you missed placing that call on Friday, and Job died on Saturday. And in your introduction, well, actually in your dedication, you said you dedicated to your wife and daughter, but then you also say to my fallen SEAL brothers and their Gold Star families. And something struck me after that. You wrote, I'm sorry and thank you. And I'm curious to know why you use the words I'm sorry.
Wow, it's a great question. And because I wish it wasn't the case, just like I wish all of these guys could still be here. I'm so fortunate to still be here. Just like every SEAL, I'm not more special than anyone else. Like everybody who wears the uniform, anybody who's gone out and done any sort of service work, everybody takes risk. But in the SEALs, like every SEAL of my era, I've buried 75 teammates, probably 15 or so, maybe 20, like brothers of mine, and so, I wish there are certain situations where I wish I could have done more, or I wish it wasn't the case. And so, they had so much to give. These are all great people. And I think about the world is missing out on those people. And this is probably what affects me and why I can't sit still, is that I very sincerely and deeply just strive to live a life where I ask myself, am I living a life that's worthy of their sacrifice?
Yeah.
And am I doing that in life? So like, that's what, for me, I've got enough money. I've got everything that I need in my life. The thing is, how do I continue to like drive, whatever success means? How do I continue to do that so that I can lift up other people and help other people?
I feel it too. I always say that, I think in some levels, like you feel this burden of obligation, right? That you've got to keep living for them, and so I very much relate to everything that you're saying. All right, we're gonna do some rapid fire stuff now.
Yeah, that sounds easier.
Yeah, let's get to some easy stuff. It's actually, well, you say easier, but all right, Mike, what's your personal why in 3 words? You've got 3 words to describe your personal why.
Team, teammate, self.
Love it. Morning routine.
Pre-COVID or after COVID?
Let's go currently. What is your current morning routine?
I used to wake up and just like I used to be Jocko where it's like just get up and bang out the workout. Now I'm like, maybe first I'll eat breakfast and work out around 10, you know? So that's why I'm chuckling a little bit. So yeah, like the aspirational or the actual, but no, very morning routine. I'm up. I always have some reading that is like timeless reading, and then I have current events, and I spend anywhere from usually about a half an hour reading, thinking, and usually that's more business topical about what's happening in the world, both from like a big picture standpoint, just current events, but then also like what's happening in the world that I work in. And then I'd say probably 5 days a week. I do like really crank out the workout at that time. 2 days a week, it's later in the day, if at all. But I think it's so critical to really keep the physical front and center, because the mental and the spiritual, while equally important for me, I find it easier when I'm working out. I eat better, I sleep better, I take more quiet time and whatnot. So.
Absolutely. Now, my question for you is, before you do that 30 minutes of reading, are you drinking caffeine before or after that? When's your first caffeine hit?
I am not really a caffeine person.
Wow.
And
Okay.
and so I try not to, but if I do, it's always first thing in the morning. If I drink caffeine mid morning or later, is affecting my sleep at night. So
got it. Best piece of parenting advice.
well, it's in the book. I would say don't ask your kid what they want to be when they grow up. Ask who they want to be, because the what is equated with a position, a role, or an identity that isn't really the deep who you are. Like when our daughter's 24 years old, when she went to school every day, besides make it a great day, you know, like we say, like this is less frequent, but like we say, who do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
The who is so much more important than the what. It's what's your work ethic, what's your values, how do you want to treat people when things get hard? Do you want to be like more logical or less logical? Like how do you like deeply your character and your values is your who, and that never changes relative to some random role that you're in. I've been in some really big positions that the world thinks are important, and I've been nobodies. And the thing is, as long as you can be the same who throughout your life, I think that's the most important thing. You don't let the highs get too high and the lows don't get too low, and it helps you really stay grounded.
I love that. What's a book you've reread because it's that good?
Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. I probably read it once a year.
If you could have dinner with any historical leader, living or dead, who would you choose?
I'm a Lincoln guy. Like just the ability to unite two very, 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 very different sides, I think is a really amazing quality. And then, to be able to put your personal comfort aside for the good of bringing sides together, I think that was greatness. I'd love to spend a week or a month or a year with that man.
That'd be a top pick for me too. Yeah. What's one habit you believe everyone should develop?
That's a really good one. It's one that I don't actually do enough, but it's like meditation and quiet time. Like days will go by when I haven't done that at all in the last couple of days, or week will go by. So I do think that when you can slow your brain down and take that quiet time, you don't necessarily need to be like chanting and all that kind of crazy stuff, but like just real meditative quiet time about thinking about what you're doing well, what's not going well enough, where are you going. My econ professor in grad school said, Mike, beware of fast trains to the wrong station. Are we going to the right station?
Yeah, no, it's so funny you say that, because I was recently talking with my therapist, and we were talking about like unplugging and intentionally unplugging, and she gives me like exercises, and I came back and I was like, yeah, if I'm putting on social media, I'm like putting up what I need to put up, but I'm not doom scrolling on social media. So I felt, I had done a nice little break from social media. And she said, so, it's just like quiet. You don't have any stimulation. I said, no, I said, it's great. I'm just listening to music. And she goes, well, wait, what do you mean listening to music? And I said, well, yeah. And she goes, how much do you have music playing in your house? And I said, like at all times. Like I am someone that has music. I have little speakers everywhere and I'm always playing music. It's always playing. And she said, Ryan, you're not turning your mind off in the way you think you are. And I said, but it's music, it's emotion evoking. And she said, no. And so she said, I want you just tomorrow to not have music play at all. And I did it. And I'm someone who, like, I get up and I get in the shower and I turn my speaker on and I'm like, all right. And
what did that do for you?
I will tell you that originally it was kind of unnerving. Like I didn't know what to do with myself and just sitting in that silence. And I didn't recognize how much just having music playing in the background was competing with me having that silent, meditative solitude that our bodies so desperately need. So, so just so you know, social media is not the only thing that, you've got to find time to just have nothing. Right? Like you said, it doesn't have to be the chanting, but you can get into a meditative state in the shower if it's just super quiet and there's nothing else, no other distractions. So
yeah, that's running for me. But yeah.
You run totally. With no music.
I run with no music, yeah.
Yes. See, I just ran the Marine Corps Marathon. And so
I saw that. Yeah, congratulations, by the way. I should have started there.
Oh, no. But I was having discussions with people in my training, like, because I had like an 11-hour Marine Corps Marathon playlist. I would get excited to go on my
11
run.
Hours? What kind of?
Well, I didn't run for 11 hours, but you don't know what's gonna pop up. And through all the training, I was just adding music, and I would get excited to go on my runs because I'm like, yeah, I can't wait to just like jam out to music for the next hour. And people would start telling me, oh, I don't run with any music, and I'm like, that's wild. Like I don't know if I could actually do that. Like even during the marathon. Now I didn't have headphones in, but I had my phone on and I had music playing. So when we got into quieter spaces during the, because you've got I wanted to hear the crowd cheering, but when we got into places where there wasn't any people on the side of the roads, like I wanted to hear music. And so like I had my phone on the whole time playing music. So I'm going to give that a try. That's going to be my next challenge. Go for a run and not have any music playing. We'll see if I can do it. All right, this is my last rapid fire question for you. You have 30 seconds to address the nation. What's your message to America?
Think about what gives you purpose. You see, the world is noisy and divided, and the way to transcend and rise above that is to really connect with your own passions and gifts and abilities and interests. A lot of people say, Mike, thanks for your service. And I love that. Thank you. But at the same time, I like to flip that around and say, thank you for your service. And I'd push everybody to say, how are you serving? You don't have to wear a military uniform to serve each other. How are you getting plastics out of the ocean or cutting fire breaks or Teach for America or whatever is important to you? But are you getting off the sidelines and contributing to making this great nation greater every day?
I love it.
I just swung that. I wasn't expecting that one, Ryan.
I know. I threw it out to you. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to ask you if you're going to run for office, but I also say that you should probably consider it and think about it. But you don't have to answer that question. I'm just throwing a comment into the wind. Mike, I was going to kind of end with this, but we talked about it earlier. But I can't thank you enough for the way that you highlight Gold Star families, that you take care of Gold Star families. And I think I said it in your bio, but like the proceeds from both of your books go to paying off mortgages for Gold Star families. And that is no small feat. And there are large organizations with hundreds of millions of dollars that do that kind of work. You're one guy and you're doing it yourself. And it means everything to know that you keep Gold Star families front and center and forefront in your head.
Ryan, this will resonate with you. I know you get this unlike anyone else, but you see, the service members pay the ultimate sacrifice, and that's kind of what makes it into the movies and everything. The families pay the ultimate sacrifice every day for the rest of their lives. And that's what also gets forgotten. And so to me, it's really important to think about the whole of family, and to say thank you. In the SEALs, in my era, we grew up not being great at asking for help. Pre 9/11, it was just you showed strength or perceived strength, and that was it. And so like that is one thing that I've gotten a little bit better at, which is saying, hey, can you please help? And with the book, like you said, I don't make a penny from it. I would be thrilled. This is my mission, is to help contribute to people, help to contribute to their lives and to Gold Star families. Getting the book out there, if your listeners and audience, which are incredible, would consider jumping on Amazon or wherever you buy books, grab a copy of Mission Driven, give it a review, follow me on Instagram. This is Mike Hayes, LinkedIn, whatever it is to help Mission Driven get out there in the world more. I just feel like this is what should be saturating the conversations in America around purpose and energy and contribution and sacrifice way more than 90% of the rest of the news. And so I just am thrilled to have the opportunity to even talk about this on your incredible platform.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity for you coming on again. Again, the book is Mission Driven, The Path to a Life of Purpose. Mike Hayes, I appreciate everything you do. I hope you write another book and I can have you on for book number 3. But check it out, available now. Number 4 USA bestseller. It's an incredible read. And Mike, you're an incredible guy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Ryan, thank you.